What if I told you that one of the most fearless Christians who ever lived was an old man who refused to say just two simple words? What if I told you that Rome, the empire that conquered nations, crushed rebellions, and ruled with iron, was brought to a halt by one elderly bishop who simply said no? What if I told you that his courage became the spark that ignited Christianity across generations? That his final moments were so miraculous that even the Roman soldiers watching were terrified? His name was Polycarp, a disciple of John the Apostle, a leader in a violent world, and a man whose death shook the ancient empire. This is his story. Polycarp wasn't just another Christian teacher. He was trained by John the Apostle himself. When he spoke about Jesus, he wasn't quoting a story. He was repeating the words of a man who walked with Christ. Smyrna, his city, was filled with idols, temples, and Roman pride, a place where Christians lived carefully, always watched. Yet Polycarp became a lighthouse of truth, preaching boldly while others hid. People traveled from distant towns just to hear him speak, because listening to Polycarp felt like listening to the voice of the early church. He carried the teachings, the passion, and even the gentleness of the apostles. As persecution grew harsher, the younger believers looked at him as a father, a shield, a shepherd, and his calm confidence made the empire nervous. Smyrna was not a safe place to preach Christ. The Romans demanded loyalty, the Jews reported Christians, pagans blamed believers for every disaster. But Polycarp refused to hide his message to save his life. He walked the streets, visiting the poor, the widowed, the sick, showing love even when it put a target on his back. When Christians were dragged into the arena, he prayed for them. When believers were arrested, he encouraged them not to deny Jesus. His boldness became famous, and the more the city authorities heard his name, the more determined they became to silence him. Christians were blamed for everything: famine, earthquakes, even political tension. So the Roman governor needed an example, someone influential, beloved, respected, someone whose arrest would send a message to every Christian in Asia Minor. All whispers pointed to one name: Polycarp. His fame had spread too far. His teachings were inspiring too many. The authorities believed that if Polycarp fell, Christianity in Smyrna would collapse. But what they didn't know was that Polycarp's resolve was stronger than their threats. One night, before his arrest, Polycarp saw a vision. In it, his pillow caught fire, glowing with bright flames. He woke up knowing exactly what it meant. He told his friends, "I must be burned alive." But he wasn't afraid. Instead, he spent his final days doing what he had always done: praying, visiting believers, encouraging the churches. Rumors spread that soldiers were searching for him, and many begged him to flee. He agreed, not out of fear, but to protect the believers around him. But a man marked by God cannot hide forever. The Romans, furious at losing his trail, tortured two young men for information. One finally broke under pressure. And so, late one evening, they surrounded the farmhouse where Polycarp had been staying. When they stormed inside, they expected a fight, a chase, or at least fear. Instead, they found the bishop standing calmly, offering them food and water. He even asked for an hour to pray. They granted it. And that hour turned into two as his prayers shook the room with compassion and strength. The soldiers, embarrassed, asked each other why they were arresting such a gentle old man. As they escorted him back to the city, the Roman officials tried persuading him to save himself. "All you must do," they insisted, "is say, 'Caesar is Lord.' Just say the words." Polycarp refused. In the city streets, crowds gathered, some mocking, some cheering for his death, but others weeping because their shepherd had been taken. Believers hid in the shadows, praying desperately. The arena loomed large in the distance, echoing the screams of past executions. Polycarp walked toward it calmly, like a man heading toward victory, not death. His peace frightened the guards more than any rebellion. Inside the crowded arena, Polycarp stood before the Roman proconsul. The official, frustrated, shouted above the noise, "Respect your old age, swear by Caesar, and I will release you." The crowd roared, demanding his death, but Polycarp lifted his head and said the words that would echo through history. 86 years I have served him, and he has never wronged me. How then can I blaspheme my king who saved me?" The arena fell silent. Even the proconsul was stunned by his courage. The soldiers tied Polycarp to a stake, preparing the flames. He refused to be nailed down, saying, "Leave me as I am. The God who gives me strength will help me endure the fire." When the wood was lit, something astonishing happened. Witnesses wrote that the flames curved around his body like a shield, forming a golden arch. The fire refused to consume him. Instead, he stood in the center, glowing, praying, smelling not of burning flesh, but of incense. The executioners panicked, the crowd gasped, and Rome's power suddenly looked very small. Terrified that he was becoming a miracle before their eyes, the authorities ordered a soldier to kill him with a sword. When the blade struck him, ancient records say so much blood poured out that it extinguished the flames at his feet. The crowd was stunned. The Christians watching were strengthened in their faith. The Romans knew they had failed to silence him. In death, Polycarp became louder than ever. His courage spread through the churches, inspiring believers to stand firm. His story became a weapon against fear. Polycarp's death didn't weaken the church, it fortified it. Books were written about him, copies carried from region to region. Young believers read about his boldness and refused to bow to persecution. His calmness in death became a standard for Christian martyrdom. His teachings shaped the early church for centuries, and even today, nearly 2,000 years later, his story reminds us that faith is stronger than fear, and obedience is more powerful than empire. The fire that was meant to silence him became the flame that still lights the church.